At 65, John Elway reveals the toughest players he has faced. When you play in the NFL for a long time, you collect stories. John Elway has a lifetime of them. At 65, he looks back with calm and clarity. He speaks slowly. He speaks honestly. The games, the practices, and the rivalries sit with him like books on a shelf. Each one holds a lesson. This script is a look at the toughest players he faced. It is about more than stats. It is about heart, will, and the small choices that make a player great. It is about the people who pushed him to be better. It is about the moments that stayed with him long after the lights went out. The tone is simple. The sentences are plain. The goal is clear. Listen to what he learned. Feel the weight of the games. See how competition changed him and the people around him. What toughness means. For Elway, toughness meant more than being strong. It meant showing up. It meant working when no one was watching. It meant facing fear and moving forward anyway. He saw toughness in many forms. Sometimes it was physical, sometimes it was mental. Often it was a mix of both. Toughness to him included routine. It included the way a player prepared. It included small habits. A player who studied film well was tough in a quiet way. A player who treated practice like a playoff game was tough in a visible way. Elway respected both kinds. He also thought toughness lived in leadership. A captain who lifted teammates when they were down was a tough player. A bench player who gave his all in practice was tough too. For Elway, the true mark of toughness was consistency. It was the habit of trying to be better each day. Early tests of speed. When Elway first entered the league, he met defenders who redefined speed. Speed did not just mean running fast, it meant thinking fast. These defenders could read a play and be where they needed to be before you could blink. They hunted quarterbacks. They forced mistakes. Elway remembers first being surprised by a defender who seemed to find him on every play. It felt like a curtain closing. One moment the pocket was clear, and the next moment chaos. That kind of speed taught him quickness in the pocket. It taught him to move his feet and make fast decisions. Speed also came from receivers. A wide receiver who ran crisp routes and broke tackles could change how a game looked. Speed on both sides made the game sharper. Those early tests of speed taught Elway to value preparation and instant recognition. The power rush. There were other tests that hit harder. The power rusher was a different kind of animal. These were men who used strength and leverage. They could drive linemen back and change the entire play with force. A strong push at the line meant you had to use your legs and set your feet again. Elway felt the power of those rushers many times. He learned to sense when a lineman had been beaten. He learned to adjust his body and slide away. Those pushers taught him the pain of a collapsed pocket. They taught him to get rid of the ball sooner and to use his mobility when needed. Technique made them more than big men. They used hands well. They set hips and pulled bodies. Facing them made each step into the line matter. That lesson in physics and timing was a hard one, but it made Elway a more careful and resilient quarterback. Opposing quarterbacks. Toughness did not only come from defenders. Many of Elway's fiercest tests came from opposing quarterbacks. These were men who could manage a game. They could lead a comeback. They were calm when the clock was against them. When two smart quarterbacks meet, the game becomes a chess match. Elway admired those rivals. He respected their calm and their craft. He remembers games where a rival drove down the field in the final minutes. Those nights taught him how to close a game. They taught him how to remain steady under pressure. Sometimes a rival's toughness showed in preparation. They studied his tendencies. They knew how to throw off his rhythm. Facing such quarterbacks forced Elway to sharpen his reads and to be unpredictable. Rival quarterbacks made him better. Tacklers who taught respect. A quarterback learns respect the hard way. A textbook tackle can jar your confidence. Elway remembers tacklers who hit with purpose but played fair. They wrapped up low. They did not try to hurt. They tried to win. Those hits taught him to pick his moments. Good tacklers were also smart. They set angles and used balance. They would chase a ball carrier until a play ended. That relentlessness sent a message across the league. It said, you must never quit on a play. It said every yard takes work. Elway respected tacklers who combined technique with heart. They made offenses stay precise. They punished sloppy play. Facing them made Elway value the detail work in his own game. Fourth quarter players. Some players came alive when the lights got brighter. The fourth quarter players were calm under heat. They did their best when everything was on the line. Those players had the rare talent to stay clear-headed and decisive with time running out. Elway saw many late-game performers. A defender who could force a turnover in the last minutes could turn a season. A receiver who ran a perfect route in crunch time could win games. Those moments taught Elway about finishing. They taught him how to measure plays that mattered more than all others. These players often had a quiet confidence. They were not loud before the play. They just made the right move. Elway learned to respect the ability to stay calm and execute when the pressure peaked. Preparation and daily work. A common thread among the toughest players was daily work. Elway often pointed to guys who treated every practice like a game. They studied film. They worked on small improvements. They did not wait for praise. They chased excellence alone. Preparation showed up in many ways. It showed in a player's physical shape. It showed in how they set up at the line. It showed in how they called audibles. Players who prepared well often made the game easier for their team and harder for the opponent. Elway tried to match that daily focus. He believed success came from habits stacked over time. Those habits were simple: show up, study, rehearse, rest, repeat. It sounded humble, but this routine built a career. Teammates and rivals. Competition can build friendships. Elway told stories where rivals later became friends. On the field, they fought. After the game, they shared mutual respect. Handshakes before a game could hide fierce battles. Post-game embraces showed why the sport mattered. Teammates also pushed him. Great teammates did not let sloppiness pass. They pointed out mistakes. They raised the bar in practice. That friction made the starting lineup stronger. Facing elite opponents with a team that matched intensity made a difference. Rivalry weeks had a special feel. The field carried extra meaning. Every yard felt heavier. Those rivalries shaped careers. They made ordinary plays feel historic. For Elway, those weeks brought out his best. Playing through injury. Injuries are part of the job. Elway experienced knocks and sore spots. He also saw other players fight through pain to give their best. Playing hurt did not mean playing recklessly. It meant managing pain to stay useful for the team. He admired players who showed resilience. Those who worked on rehab and still practiced were tough. They were careful about healing and wise about risk. This kind of grit showed a long view. It showed that winning mattered more than short bursts of glory. At the same time, he learned to value rest. Showing up was not always the same as being smart. The best players found balance. They did the hard work of recovery so they could be there for the big moments. The changing game. Football changed during his career. Rules shifted, training methods evolved, players became faster and more specialized, yet something constant remained. The heart of the game still required courage and effort. Elway reflected on past eras. The old days rewarded pain and iron will. The newer era rewarded science and strategy. Both types of toughness earned respect. One was blunt and raw. The other was refined and trained. He loved the way both met on the field. He also saw new skills emerge. Quarterbacks move more now. Receivers run sharper. Defensive schemes grew complex. That change pushed players to learn more and to practice in different ways. The sport got smarter and faster, but the need for grit stayed. Moments that stayed with him. Certain plays never leave a player's memory. Elway kept a mental film of hits and saves and impossible catches. He remembered the late-game sack that flipped a scoreboard. He remembered the tackle on a third down that ended a drive. These moments were small and huge at once. They showed how a single play could alter a season. They taught him that focus matters from the first whistle to the last. A single misstep could cost a game. A single perfect move could make a legend. Those memories were also lessons. They taught humility. They taught preparation. They taught that the sum of small things becomes the big story. Leadership and quiet strength. Leadership was a rare form of toughness. Not everyone who shouted was a leader. Elway admired those who led by example. They were steady. They were accountable. They pushed others without drama. He spoke about veterans who helped rookies. A veteran who stayed after practice to show a young player footwork was a leader. A captain who owned a mistake in front of the locker room was a leader. That humility took courage. Leadership built teams. It created trust. A quarterback needs players who will run through walls. Those walls form when leaders teach and protect and demand the best. The rookie who surprised. Every season brings rookies full of fire. Some arrive fearless, some arrive coachable. Elway recalled young players who hit the field like they belonged. Their lack of fear was both raw and dangerous for the opponent. He loved when a rookie mixed talent with attention. A player who wanted to learn and who moved with purpose could shift a team's fortunes. Facing such rookies kept veterans honest. It meant you could not rely only on past reputation. Rookies also brought new energy. They had fewer scars and more hunger. That blend forced experienced players to evolve. It kept the league fresh and competitive. Mental toughness. The NFL tests the mind as much as the body. Elway believed mental toughness was the anchor of success. It showed in focus under noise. It showed in rebound after mistakes. It showed in the ability to read the field when chaos reigned. He valued players who could keep a clear head. Players who made sound choices in the final minutes had practiced that calm. Mental toughness is a skill built in quiet moments. It grows in film rooms and late-night drills. This kind of strength allowed players to improvise. It allowed them to adapt. It kept them from panicking when things fell apart. In Elway's view, the best players were strong, both above the neck and below the heart. Players who taught him. The toughest opponents taught him the most. A fierce pass rusher taught him to move his feet. A smart linebacker taught him where to look. A clutch receiver taught him timing. Each opponent expanded his toolbox. He welcomed those lessons. Losses were painful but instructive. They exposed weaknesses. They offered paths to improve. Elway said he watched film with hunger after a tough loss. He studied what went wrong and how to fix it. That humility to learn kept him in the game longer. It kept him open to change. Opponents who taught him were, in a way, part of his education. Training habits. Elway always returned to one idea when he spoke about lasting success. It was not a secret drill or a rare skill. It was a routine. The men he called the toughest had habits that were nearly boring in their consistency. They warmed up right. They stretched. They lifted with purpose. They worked on small footwork drills no one watched. They ran routes until they were perfect. They did the little things because they knew little things add up. This steady work made the big moments possible. A clutch catch in the fourth quarter often began in a rainy Tuesday practice. A perfect throw under pressure came from hours of repetition. Those steady habits separated the players who lasted from those who burned bright and then faded. Elway said he envied players who loved the daily grind. Their love for the routine was a form of quiet toughness. Film room. The film room was holy ground. For many players, the work there was more important than any weight room. Elway admired opponents who treated film study like a craft. They broke down formations. They noted tendencies. They saw small tells that others missed. Film taught a player to be patient and to plan. Watching tape also taught humility. You see your errors on film with brutal clarity. The toughest players embraced that lesson. They used it to improve, not to make excuses. Elway remembered sitting with rivals in meetings where mutual respect grew from the way they competed on film. That shared study made the game richer for everyone. The role of coaches. Coaches shape toughness. A coach who demands discipline but treats players with respect creates a culture of resilience. Elway spoke often about coaches who refused to lower standards and who expected players to carry themselves with pride. Those coaches taught young men how to be professionals. A tough coach did not yell for the sake of voice. He corrected technique. He taught position footwork. He organized practices to simulate pressure. He pushed players to be uncomfortable so that in games they could be calm. Elway appreciated coaches who challenged him and who trusted him to grow. That leadership, he said, was essential to building teams that could face the toughest opponents. Moments of humility. Not every lesson came from victory. Some of the most powerful lessons came from mistakes. Elway remembered games where a simple error cost a win. Those moments stung. They also opened pathways to change. Humility after a loss was a form of toughness too. It takes strength to accept blame and to do the work to be better. Many of the toughest players showed this side. They owned their mistakes in the locker room. They fixed them in the film room. They did not hide. That honesty became a bedrock for trust. Teammates who saw this were more likely to follow. In Elway's view, a team that can handle its own mistakes will survive the long season. The weight of expectation. As careers grow, so do expectations. Fans, media, and history create pressure. Tough players learn to carry that weight without cracking. Elway remembered seasons when the headlines felt loud and personal. The best players focused on what they could control. They controlled their habits, their preparation, their effort. The weight also taught perspective. With time, a player learns that criticism can sharpen resolve or crush spirit. The toughest used it as fuel. They let harsh words push them to train harder and to be kinder teammates. That was a rare blend of ego control and determination. Teammates who became family. Over long careers, teammates become family. The shared struggle builds deep bonds. Elway often spoke about players who stayed in touch long after helmets were hung up. Those relationships were a final measure of toughness. People who kept friendships through fights and wins proved they cared about more than the scoreboard. This family extended to training staff and trainers. A player who respected the people who helped him recover and improve showed maturity. Toughness was not just about heroic moments. It was about how you treated people in the quiet times. The value of preparation for life after football. Elway also thought about life beyond the field. The toughest players planned for that chapter. They invested in education, in skills, and in relationships. The discipline that made a man a great player often translated to success in business, coaching, or community work. He admired players who used the traits they honed in sports to build lives after retirement. This preparation required foresight. It meant asking small questions early. What will you do after you stop playing? Who will you be? The toughest players answered those questions with planning and humility. That made their post-football life less fragile. Legacy and gratitude. A final mark of toughness was the way players treated their legacy. Elway felt gratitude for the opponents who pushed him. He saw legacy not as trophies, but as the people you helped and the standards you raised. Tough players passed on knowledge. They coached youth. They mentored rookies. They kept the game healthy. He also thanked the fans. Fans cheered. They criticized. They filled stadiums. Facing thousands of people every other week is its own test. The toughest players found ways to give back because they knew their role in a larger story. Rivalries that defined years. Some rivalries lasted seasons. They cut deep. They pushed teams to extremes. Elway spoke of matchups that felt like a playoff every time. Those rivalries trained players in pressure situations. Rival games said more than a win or loss. They showed character. They tested preparation. They revealed depth in a roster. For Elway, a rivalry was a mirror. It showed what a team valued and where it needed work. He loved that intensity. Rivalries made history feel personal. They made each play count more. Those contests built character across generations. Advice to young players. Elway's advice boiled down to basics. Work on small things every day. Respect recovery. Study film like it is gold. Be a teammate. Be coachable. Those habits compound over seasons. He urged young players to build character. Football gives loud praise and quick setbacks. Stay humble. Keep working. Do not chase fame. Chase skill. Chase health. Chase the long game. He also told them to value relationships. Coaches, trainers, and teammates shape a career. Treat them with respect. Those bonds sustain you in hard times. Closing. At 65, Elway looks back with gratitude. The toughest players he faced made him better. They forced him to improve. They asked more from him than he asked from himself. In that challenge, he found meaning. The game taught him about effort, humility, and the power of steady work. He learned from loss and from triumph. He learned from young men who arrived with hunger and veterans who kept standards high. When he finishes, he smiles. He knows he did not do it alone. Each rival, each teammate, each coach left a mark. Those marks tell a story of a life spent chasing excellence. That story is the clearest measure of toughness he knows.